What is going on? I'm the MMA Mustache, and we are back with another prediction video. Today, we are going to be looking at UFC Fight Night Hernandez versus Rodrigues in Sacramento. We're going to be breaking down every fight on the card. And as you can probably see with the thumbnail in this one, I think there is a lot of easy fights to predict in this, but there's also some sneaky tactics that we can use to make some money as well. But let's get straight into the predictions, starting with who do we have here? We have the first fight of the night is Chanel Dyer versus Elise Reed. Chanel Dyer, you may be seeing her recently if you watched the Carol Farrow fight against Gigi last week, I believe it was, or 2 weeks ago. Chanel Dyer came off the Contender Series where she did lose to Carol Farrow, but she still got given the contract just because she was a bit of a prospect in her own right. And she looked somewhat decent in that fight. She kind of was, she got dropped a lot of times, but she showed toughness and she never stopped fighting. She is coming off of a TKO win over Ravina Oliveira, who recently lost to Juliana Miller. This was a really good performance for Chanel Dyer. Her teep kicks, her kicks to the body, her kicks up top. She was able to find the KO in the second round, I believe. Really impressive performance and a really good way to bounce back and debut in the UFC. However, Ravina Oliveira is just not UFC level. Juliana Miller isn't UFC level, and she was able to take her down very easily and submit Ravina Oliveira. But for Elise Reed, I also don't think this girl here is UFC level either. Cage Fury champion, as you can see by the picture. She is coming off the loss to Denise Gomez, which was a TKO. It was over a year ago, but still, I think a year off is good for recovery, but it's bad for activity. I'm taking Chanel Dyer. I think she's way better everywhere in this fight. Chanel Dyer is, she's from England, so she's kind of a Leon Edwards in a way. She does have a very stand-up style with kicks and kind of tries to stay safe, doesn't always push the volume. But her takedown defense is actually solid, and her offensive wrestling in itself is actually decent. So I think even if she wants to mix it up, she might be able to get Elise Reed down to the ground. But her way to win this fight is the teep at range, body kick low, kick high, use the hands when Elise Reed comes into range. I would like to see Chanel Dyer at 25 years old just continue to win, continue to build herself, and that's what this fight really is. The UFC's given us a prospect builder here. I am going to take Chanel Dyer, and I'm actually going to take her by KO. I think she's going to finish this fight. I think she's going to get Elise Reed out of there. Let's move on to the next fight. Jackson McVeigh versus Wes Schultz. I have heard so many people and predictors talking about this fight recently. People are looking for an underdog on this card. A lot of people are jumping on Wes Schultz. I am going to tell you straight off the bat, I will not be doing that. I am taking Jackson McVeigh in this fight. I am going to be taking him by KO. I think his stand-up is far better than Wes Schultz. I think Wes Schultz. I think both guys are very low level in the UFC, very low level in the middleweight division. And you normally need guys like this to help build the resumes of a Toba Gautier and these young middleweight prospects. But for some reason, they're fighting each other here. So this very much is a cross-pass. Who wants to keep their job? Who's going to at least try and stay in the UFC and who's not? Wes Schultz, good wrestling, or decent enough wrestling, but not good enough for me to pick him. He is coming off of a win over Ben Johnston, who's 5-1. That was on the Australian card, I believe. I can't remember. Was it the JDM fight night, maybe, or something similar to that? But Wes Schultz took that fight. Ben Johnston stepped in on short notice. He came out of retirement for that fight because his fighter that he was training was scheduled to take the fight. He pulled out, so he thought, you know what, I'll step up and I'll fight Wes Schultz. He was winning both rounds against Wes Schultz until he sunk his head into a guillotine and Wes Schultz was able to sub him. So please don't look at this and go, oh, Ben Johnston's coming off of a win. Wes Schultz is coming off of a win 3 months ago. Perhaps I should take him here. He's on a run. He's got some momentum. Very, very low level Wes Schultz. I think Jackson McVeigh is going to be able to shock off the takedowns. A submission over Cedric Dumas means absolutely nothing. A finish win over Cedric Dumas is the bare minimum. If you're going to fight Cedric, you should be getting him out of there very quickly if you are UFC level. Losses to Zach Reese, not a great look. He kind of is a Zach Reese clone as well. Jackson McVeigh, very tall, kind of lanky for the build. Uses his range quite effectively. Kicks, hands. Lost to Bruno Ferreira as well. I believe that was his UFC debut. Bruno Ferreira, not a great loss to have on your record either. But for Jackson McVeigh, I just think he's better on the feet. I think he's going to find the shots. I don't see what Wes Schultz can do. Even if Wes Schultz gets him down, I don't see why Jackson McVeigh can't build back up against the cage, get back to his feet, and put the damage on Wes Schultz. I see this taking place on the feet, and I see Jackson McVeigh finding that KO. I think he finds it early too. I don't trust in Westhold's toughness that much. I don't think he is going to be anything. Lost to Damien Pinas. Who hasn't, though? Damien Pinas is looking pretty good. Won on the Contender Series. Beat a guy that was 7-4. Lost to Mansour Abdul Malik. There you go. So they are using, these guys to build some people in the middleweight division. But I see this going similar to that too. I see Jackson McVeigh landing the nice shot, landing a 1-2 down the middle, something simple, hurting Wes Schultz and getting him out of there. Let's move on to the next fight, which is Gage Young versus Stan Dorsainville. And it's a hard name to pronounce, but I have actually been looking at Stan Dorsainville. When this fight first came about, it was actually Cody Steele to fight Gage Young. Cody Steele pulls out of the fight, and Stan steps up on short notice. I like Gage Young. Gage Young is a grinder. He's going to push the pace. He can wrestle. He can strike. He's going to be there for all 3 rounds. He is going to be something in the UFC. His only losses really to Quillan Salkild, which has aged very well, and then to Evan Alder, which isn't a terrible loss in itself. However, the Thiago Moises win was by split decision, but Thiago Moises isn't terrible. He's definitely fading, and he's not the fighter he once was that I believe even took Islam down at a certain point. But Gage Young was able to lose the first round there and kind of shake that back and get another and win the next 2 rounds. The decision win over Mahesh Sheikh hasn't aged perfectly well. I'd like to see Gage Young get some finishes there, but I think Gage Young's going to come out here. I think he's going to push the pace. I think he's going to grind. I think he's going to mix it up. I think he's going to force Stan to fight. However, in watching Stan, he has only got 5 fights. And it's like, how's his cardio going to hold up? Recently, for these short notice fights, every time it's a short notice, I will take the opposing fighter by finish. I took Charles Johnson by finish. I got that correct. There was another short notice fight. Was it the week before that? I'm forgetting who it was, but I took the person fighting the guy on short notice to win by finish, and it happened again. A lot of the time, these short notice guys come in, and they only have 1 round of cardio, so even if they're the better fighter, all you have to do is survive. However, you might be thinking going into this fight, I'll take Gage Young. He's going to put the cardio on him. Even if he loses that first round, he's got 2 rounds to go against Stan. Stan has all of the skills. He is good on the feet. His striking is powerful. He throws high volume. His wrestling's good. His double leg entries are really good. His ground and pound's really good once he is on top. However, his striking defense is a little bit lackluster. But that is because he's always on the gas. He's always fighting, and he's offensive. And when you are opening up and you're offensive on the feet, you leave yourself defensively irresponsible. That is my breakdown of the fight. However, what I'm trying to say is Stan isn't actually taking this fight on short notice. He had a big fight in the LFA promotion booked for 2 weeks from now. So all I've done is say, hey, this person's pulled out of the fight. We need someone to step in on short notice to fight Gage Young. But really, is it short notice if you're already in a camp? What I will say is Gage Young was preparing for Cody Steele, who's primarily a wrestler. So I think he is going to be able to look somewhat decent against a guy like Stan, who's going to want to try and shoot and wrestle. But I am taking Stan in this fight. I think even though it's short notice, or even though he hasn't had as much preparation, Gage Young hasn't been preparing for Stan either. And I think Stan's a very, very good fighter. I think even if Stan loses, he's going to be something in the UFC. So I'm happy that they've signed him. It's the right choice to make. But a lot of people are saying too little, it's too soon for him. I don't think so. I think Gage Young has, although he's only lost to good people, I haven't been over the top impressed by his performances. So I think Stan has 3 rounds to work here. I don't think the cardio will come into question that much. And if it does, I think Gage Young might only be able to win the 3rd round. I'm not super confident in Gage Young striking on the feet, even though Stan is irresponsible. I don't think Gage catches him with a massive punch. Even though he was able to drop Thiago Moises, he didn't really have the killer instinct to go for the finish on Thiago Moises. So I'm going to take Stan in this fight. I'm going to take him by decision, which maybe I should take a KO because it's like, can he go the 3 rounds? But no, I think this is going to be a close fight. I'm going to go Stan 29-28. That is my first underdog pick of the card. Moving up, we have Marcio Barboza versus Ryan Coos. I'm not sure why this fight is happening, but it is happening. And it's a very, very, very scary debut for Ryan Coos to go up against Marcio Barboza, who you guys probably know from the Contender Series fight, but also the Dennis Bazooka KO. Quite possibly one of the best debut KOs we have seen definitely this year. That was a nasty finish to Dennis Bazooka, who isn't great. Bogdan Grad recently beat him. Dennis Bazooka isn't super high level. He is able to be finished. But clearly Barboza has power. Clearly his hands are nasty. This guy is 18-2, and I think 17 of those or 16 of those are by like first round finish. The guy's an absolute killer. He really is. And for Ryan Hughes, I haven't looked at him a lot, but what I can say is I watched the Thiago Belo fight, and even though it was 2 years ago, I saw nothing impressive from Ryan Hughes. And if we're being honest, I saw Ryan Hughes getting beaten up on the feet by what's his name again? By Bello, and I even saw Bello winning a lot of the wrestling exchanges. So I don't see how Ryan Hughes can win this fight. Maybe he takes him down and it becomes a gritty back and forth, but I'm not going to trust in it. I'm going to trust in Barboza to win by KO. And I think the first round, I think that's safe. I think Barboza looks for the kill, he goes for the kill, and he has the power to kill someone like Ryan Hughes, who really wasn't that defensively responsible in that fight. He was eating head kicks. He was a lot of the shots were landing on him. He's kind of one of these fighters that will throw a massive overhand and look down at their feet at the same time and dip their head with it, almost like they're trying to shoot into a takedown. But, if the person you're fighting is able to cut angles and have decent boxing, they see that coming from a mile away, they step out of the right hand, and now they've got an opponent who's looking down at their own feet, not seeing where the shot's coming from. So I'm going to take Barboza to win by first round KO. And if you're feeling, if you're wondering what to pick here, I would look at the Tapology percentage. 97% of people are on Barboza, so we know what's happening here. Barboza is going to kill this guy. It just comes down to whether or not it's in the first round. Next, we have Nasrat Haqparast versus Chris Padilla, who is known as Taco. Man, I think this fight's 50-50. A lot of people think Nasrat is only a boxer, which I agree with. Nasrat does primarily box. The argument is that he's coming off of a head kick KO to Quillan Salkeld. How's he going to look? That was only how long ago? So that was only 9 months ago. It's like, it was a nasty, brutal KO. He didn't wake up for a long time. Is Nasrat, who's known for having these back and forth boxing exchanges, these back and forth wars on the feet, is he going to still be confident in his chin and willing to go out there and do that with Chris Padilla? I don't think he needs to. I like Chris Padilla. I understand why people back Chris Padilla. He's a fun fighter. He brings it. I think he was robbed in his last fight against Medeiros, where it was overruled and turned into a draw. He clearly won that fight. However, for a guy like Chris Padilla, the Jai Herbert split decision, I scored that for Jai Herbert. And Jai Herbert's a technical guy, but he has very, very low output and very low volume. Chris Padilla finds a way to drag people into low output and low volume fights. I don't think he'll be able to do that with Nasrat. I think this is going to take place on the feet. I think both guys are going to strike and punch. Maybe Chris Padilla, you could say it's a smart pick because he's going to mix in maybe a body kick and some elbows, maybe even try to push Nasrat up against the cage. But I trust in Nasrat's boxing a lot more than I do Padilla's. I think the win over Esteban Ribovic is aging well. I think Nasrat's been in there with way higher competition. His losses to Bobby Green, his losses to Dan Hooker, his losses to Drew Dober. He's fighting a lot higher level than Chris is. And I think we're going to see Chris actually really struggle with this. I think this is going to be a back and forth fight. And I honestly think I could see this being a robbery decision to either guy. But I am going to trust in Nasrat. I think it's going to go the decision because I think Nasrat may take things a little bit slower in that first round. But for Nasrat, I would like to see him mix it up a little bit. Add some kicks into your game. For Chris Padilla, if Chris Padilla comes out there and he's lead kicking, he's body kicking, he's head kicking, he probably will win this fight. That was a smart game plan from Quillan Salkeld to go out there and kick against Nasrat because Nasrat is primarily a boxer. But I don't think Chris Padilla is. Chris Padilla's bread and butter is his hands. It really is. So I think we're going to go out here. We're going to see a boxing fight. And I trust Nasrat in that boxing fight. I really, really do. I think he's more proven. So Chris Padilla still hasn't really grown on me yet. I think that third round against Jai Herbert, he definitely lost. His cardio is a little bit in question sometimes when he does get into these back and forth exchanges. We know Nasrat can go a hard 3 rounds. So I'm going to be taking Nasrat Haqparast to win by decision. Next up, we have Shamil the Blob, the Bald Blob, versus Shamil Gaziev versus Kennedy Nchukwu. We have the human microphone versus the human can't grow an afro. Shamil Gaziev, 2-fight losing streak to pretty decent competition, Waldo Cortez Acosta and Brando Pericic. But not only is it a 2-fight losing streak, it's a 2-fight KO streak. That is where things start getting a little bit scary. Kennedy Nchukwu, since moving up to heavyweight, this guy was supposed to be something. This is the guy that beat Carlos Ulberg. He absorbed every single shot Carlos Ulberg had, and then he KO'd him in the third round. The only guy to ever beat Carlos Ulberg, Kennedy Nchukwu. And where is he? He's ranked 22 in the heavyweight division, and he's winning one, losing one, winning one, losing one. Kennedy Nzechukwu, I think, has the skills, has the tools to win. Yeah, look, it beats Carlos Ulberg and loses to Ovince St. Preux when Ovin's, OSP is like 40. Beats Chris Barnett. Chris Barnett, lowest level heavyweight fighter of all time, one of them anyway. Beats Lucas Brzezinski, another super low level fighter in the heavyweight division. Walter Walker submission, I can give you that. Walter Walker is submitting a lot of guys. But the Marcus Buchecha fight, man, this was shit. It's a draw, but I think for Kennedy Nzechukwu, he had the fight won, but he has such low IQ that even when Buchecha was absolutely gassed, he was getting to Kennedy's hips, he was getting Kennedy down, he was pushing him up against the cage, and Kennedy just had nothing left in the third round. He was unable to shuck the takedowns off, and all he had to do was hit Marcus a couple of times and he would have won the fight. He was unable to do it. I do think he's going to have the speed advantage here. I do worry a little bit for Shamil Gaziev, who has terrible cardio. But Kennedy Nzechukwu, he is the faster guy. He's coming up from light heavyweight, but he does not have the volume. He fights like a lethargic fighter. And lethargic, I mean lazy. He's looking for the perfect opportunity. He's trying to be a sniper the whole time. And it might work with that range. It might work if you have speed as well. But against a guy like Shamil Gaziev, he's more than happy to eat a shot and give one. He is coming off of a KO loss to Brandon Pericic, but not only is Brandon Pericic clearly shown to be a good fighter, he's in the top 10, it took him 2 rounds and it took him like 90 significant strikes to get rid of Shamil Gaziev. Whereas Brandon Pericic's other fights, he's knocking guys out with 2 or 3 punches and getting straight through them. Shamil Gaziev was even able to get him down at a certain point. So Shamil Gaziev did show that he still had a chin in that fight, and he was actually landing some shots on Brando Pericic. I think I'm going to take Shamil Gaziev in this. I like the fact that he could wrestle. Kennedy, I can't trust in Kennedy. Kennedy really is the heavyweight Kevin Holland, where we don't know whether or not he's going to show up. Is he going to show up and try and actually win today, or is he just going to try and survive and get his paycheck? I'm going to take Shamil. Shamil needs this. I'm not going to go by decision. I am going to go by KO in the second round. I think they're going to have a high first round, high pressure, high pace. Both guys are going to look sloppy and slow in the second, and I think Gazier is going to catch Kennedy with something. Maybe even put him down to the ground and just, Kennedy is the kind of guy to give up. So I'm going to take Shamil Gaziev. I am taking the blob, even though he's on a 2-fight losing streak. I'm going to take him to beat Kennedy Nzechukwu. Moving up the card, we have Jamal Emmers versus Larion Douglas. Jamal Emmers is a very, very weird fighter. He's a very weird case. He's a very weird fighter to predict. He is kind of like the featherweight, but he used to be bantamweight version of Michael Johnson. He loses to the people he should beat, i.e. Nate Landwehr. He was hurting Nate Landwehr, and Nate Landwehr, all he had to do was land one couple shots and make it dirty, and he got KO'd in the first round, or maybe the second. But then he'll go out there in his debut fight and beat Corey Sandhagen. Jamal Emmers has a win over Corey Sandhagen. He also beat Dennis Bazooka. Like we said, that hasn't really aged that well. Jack Jenkins, decision split loss to Jack Jenkins. Jack Jenkins is a really good fighter. Fights out of Australia, mixes it up really nicely. So I don't hate that loss, especially by split decision. Beat Gabriel Miranda, not a crazy win to have under. And then Hyder Emil, he kind of fucked Hyder Emil and managed to beat him, but Hyder Emil hasn't looked that great. For Jamal Emmers, though, he's 37. Larion Douglas, everyone's so high on this guy. They're saying he's the most powerful puncher we've ever seen at this weight class. The Julian Erosa KO was disgusting. He got him with a jab, dropped him twice in 60 seconds. The Cam Teague fight on the Contender Series, same thing. I think he dropped him 2 times in 30 seconds. Larion Douglas does not need to be the better fighter. He does not need to land more. He just needs to land. He is very patient, though. But when he does throw, he throws with power, and he normally lands. I'm taking Larion Douglas by KO. I'm a little bit concerned because I think Jamal Emmers is a really good fighter. I think he's super underrated. But for Jamal Emmers, I could almost see Jamal Emmers dancing around for the first 3 or 4 minutes of the first round, looking really good, trying to mix in the takedowns. Douglas has to defend. Jamal Emmers cutting the angle, landing the shots on the feet, looking good, and then bang, gets caught with one shot and it's all over. That's all it takes. Jamal Emmers has shown to be a little bit chinny as well. That was kind of how the Nate Landwehr fight went down. He was kind of winning till he wasn't. And if Nate Landwehr can land on you and hurt you, I believe Larion Douglas can as well. So I'm going to take Larion Douglas. Jamal Emmers is 37. He's kind of on his way out. I think Larion Douglas should be able to get this done. However, I don't hate the Jamal Emmers pick. I really don't, because Jamal Emmers does beat people he's supposed to beat. And there's been a lot of crazy underdogs recently that have been coming through, but I'm going to trust in Douglas. I'm going to trust in the hand power, and I'm going to trust in him winning by KO and doing what's right. So I'm going to take Larian Douglas to win by first round KO. Anthony Wint versus Terrence Chatman. What a crazy fight. Look at these two guys' physiques. You have the big blob in Chatman, and then you have Anthony Wint, who looks like a fucking superhero. Looks like King Kong. The guy's physique is absolutely unreal. 7-0, fighting 5-1, Terrence Chatman. Anthony Wint, you might know him from the Contender Series last week. This guy literally won last week and said, hey, put me on the fucking card, Dana. So here we go. He won in under a minute, and I don't see why this is going to be any different. I do believe he had a few decisions early in his career, Anthony Wint. I don't hate that. Decision split, still undefeated. I don't hate for a young fighter to have to go those three rounds and get that experience and now kind of get that confidence that, hey, I can really do this. And, I'm not going to guess if I throw a couple hard punches in the first round, so I can kind of push the pace. He ran after, in his Contender Series fight, he just ran out there after Matt Adams, dropped him on his fucking, double-legged him, dropped him on his ass, and then just beat the living shit out of him. I'm going to trust in him to do this again against Terrence Chatman. Terrence Chatman's not terrible, and I actually think even though look at his last win, though, against a guy who's 8-16. Like, look at the competition he's fighting. It is heavyweight, so I feel like Terrence Chatman always is going to have a chance. You're always going to have a puncher's chance, but he just is so open to being picked up and dumped on his ass, dropped to the ground, taken down, and Anthony Wint to just take over this fight. However, Terrence Chatman, he's probably going to be something in the heavyweight division. He'll probably hang around and win a couple of low-level fights. I imagine he would probably get past a Lucas Brzezinski or, those kind of lower-level heavyweight fights. But Anthony Wint may not be top 15. He may not be, that proven yet, but he should win this fight, and he should win this fight very quickly in impressive fashion. So I'm going to take Anthony Wint to use his wrestling and win in the first round by KO. We move up the card to our second female fight. Carly Judice versus Jalcea Chavez. Another fun fight, to be honest. I actually don't hate the female fights on this card like I normally do, and the reason for that is I'm going to be picking both by finish. Carly Judice has really impressed me. There are a few fighters in the female division weight classes in the UFC who really stand out to me, and I do look forward to their performances, and there is clear evolution between each performance. I think Carly Judice really, really does show that. She does have 2 losses on her record, one on the Contender Series, one in the UFC to Gabriela Hernandez 2 years ago. Since then, though, she has bounced back against Duban with a KO her with a head kick in the first round. That was a really clean performance. Nicole Calais KO'd her, knee to the liver, ground strikes. Then she had the fight against Juliana Miller where she won by decision. But Juliana Miller's tough, and Carly Judice was still able to get off so many shots in that fight. The volume that Carly Judice throws is really, really impressive. Which is why I'm super happy to be able to take her in a fight. And, I just think with Chavez, she really, even though she's 7-0, she hasn't looked that great. Even against Duban, she had her down on the ground, she had her back, and it just looked like even though her wheelhouse is supposed to be on the ground with these submissions and this jiu-jitsu, it looked like she didn't really know what she was doing there. So I do believe she has some skill. She might be able to mix in the wrestling here. But I think once she gets it to the floor, I think Carly Judice is just going to be able to build her way back up to the feet, and I don't see what Chavez is going to really have for her. She doesn't have great submission offense. Carly Judice has fought against Juliana Miller, who arguably has stronger and better wrestling than Chavez. So I think this is going to take place on the feet, and I think Carly Judice is just going to take over. I don't think Chavez really has that good striking. Look at her. She's winning a fight over against a girl who's 0-0, a girl who's 0-2, a girl who's 0-2, a girl who's 6-1. And then barely gets passed open by a split decision. Carly Judice is fighting way higher competition and finishing them in the first round. I'm taking Judice. I'm taking her by KO in the second. I think an accumulation of... I'm actually going to go in the third. I think accumulation of volume is just going to lead to Chavez breaking. Carly Judice won't stop. And she's truly a girl that's trying to rise up the rankings. She's not here to look cool. She's not here to say I'm a fighter. She is here to win and try and rise through those rankings. And I can back someone like that. I'm a big fan of volume fighters because even if they don't get the finish, even if they aren't the better fighter, a lot of the time they can win on the scorecards just because they are actually doing more. Moving on to a really, really fun fight that I'm looking forward to. Everyone's looking forward to this. Markel Medeiros versus Mason Jones. Mason Jones is just a vessel of excitement. This guy, you cannot miss his fights, man. He makes every fight close, though, because he just does not care. It's caution to the wind every single time. He's an absolute marauder. He's going to come forward. He's going to grind. He's kind of like what Gage Young wants to be, just constant pressure, constant mixing in the wrestling, constant stand-up. Maybe not the prettiest and maybe not the best techniques, but he's still 18-2, which is a really good record. He was in the UFC, lost to Ludovic Klein and another person I can't remember, but those are good fighters. Went to Cage Warriors, finished 3 or 4 fights in a row, and now he's back in the UFC, and he's looked absolutely phenomenal. Beating Axel Sola, which is a really good win. You know, Axel Sola was undefeated at the time. That's aging really good. Axel Sola obviously just coming over the win of Bonfim. Balaji Oki, he was hurt in that fight, but then able to come back and KO him with a comeback win. Looked really good. Jeremy Stevens, he could have looked better in the Jeremy Stevens fight. I would have liked for him to wrestle more, but for Markel Medeiros, he's kind of too slick, too clean. He's not going to be able to keep up with the pace of Mason Jones. He's not going to be able to keep up with the volume. The first round's going to be close, and for Mason Jones, because he's so aggressive, I do sometimes worry that he's going to leave his chin up and maybe Medeiros can catch him with something, or eventually I do believe someone will catch Mason Jones with something, but I think you need to have that one-shot knockout power. I think if you try to go to war with this guy, or volume for volume, or shot for shot, Mason Jones is going to win that every single time. So I'm going to take Mason Jones by decision, because I believe there may be a couple of moments for Markel Medeiros where he looks good. Like I said, Mason Jones has a way of dragging these fighters into these close fights. But for Marcel Medeiros, wins by KO in the Contender Series, beats Landon Quinones, which isn't an amazing win, but it's not bad. Austin Hubbard split decision, though, and Austin Hubbard's able to get you down and get your back. You know, Austin Hubbard, way past his prime. This was his second run in the UFC when he was able to do this. So I don't like that you're only winning by split decision over Austin Hubbard. Mark Choinsky is a decent win. And then this draw to Chris Padilla, you really didn't actually draw with Chris Padilla. Chris Padilla was way ahead in that fight. I thought he did enough to win that fight, so I'm not sure why that became a draw. I think Mason Jones is going to do even better than Chris Padilla and not even give us a chance to have a robbery decision. I think Mason Jones, accumulation of strikes, the volume, the aggressiveness, the mixing in of the wrestling, I think it's going to be too much for Medeiros, and I think we're going to have a classic, typical Mason Jones war or Mason Jones performance, and I'm looking forward to it. Next, we have Reina Dorita versus Roman Dolidze. At 205 pounds, it's important to realize both these guys are coming up from middleweight. Dolidze's already fought at 205 pounds before against Anthony Smith and maybe one other fight that's escaping me right now that I can't think of. For Dolidze, he beat Anthony Smith. He came back down. He TKO'd Kevin Holland. He beat Marvin Vettori. But that was his last win. And what we've learned from this is this was a rib injury for Kevin Holland, so you can't put too much stock into that win. Anthony Smith was way past his prime, and you still went to decision. You weren't able to finish Anthony Smith. And then for the Marvin Vettori fight, Marvin Vettori's been losing to everybody recently. All you have to do with Marvin Vettori is stay out of the boxing range, and you will beat him. All Marvin does now is box without his wrestling. He's terrible. He's completely fallen off, so that win's not that great. Anthony Hernandez made this guy look like a bitch. He just dragged him around the cage. He had fun with him. He just punched him when he wanted to. He choked him. He picked him up. He slammed him down. Dolidze didn't land a single shot in that fight. He probably did on the stats, but there was no moment of success for Dolidze in that fight. He was broken really badly. And then the loss to Leroy Duncan. It was somewhat close, so I can't say he got dominated in that fight, but Christian Leroy Duncan's kind of known to sometimes just point fight to get that win, so I'm not going to put heaps of stock into that loss. I'm not going to put heaps of stock into it being a close fight. Dolidze still lost. RDR, on the other hand, comes in, debuts against Gerald Meerschaert, wins that, beats Kevin Holland in really impressive fashion. First guy to ever beat Bo Nickel, TKOs him, and a win that's aging very well. Split decision to Whittaker. Was a really messy, scrappy, sloppy fight, and even though Whittaker's way past his prime, it's still former middleweight champion Robert Whittaker. It's still the guy who fought Israel Adesanya twice. It's still Robert Whittaker, the guy who cleared the entire division out, so that Israel had no contenders. Whittaker's beaten basically everybody at middleweight, so I don't hate that it was hard for RDR to get past him there. Lost to Brandon Allen, but did win the early rounds, then just gassed and kind of gave up in the corner. It was quite a bad look. But then he came back against Cal Baralho, had a tough fight, had some moments of success with that step-in knee, ate a lot of shots and showed a good chin. But ultimately, I think what we've realized for RDR, Reina Dorita, is that he is unable to do well at middleweight because of the weight cut. That's what he put it down to. That's why he says he struggles to go 5 rounds or struggles to go any more than 2 rounds. However, this is at light heavyweight. He is not going to be having to cut the weight. He is the bigger man. He's 6'4". Dolidze's 6'2". He's 35. Dolidze's 38. So both guys are starting to teeter off a little bit. I think RDR's better everywhere. I think he has the tools on the feet. I think Dolidze's tough. I don't think RDR's going to get him out of there. I don't think he's going to finish him on the feet. I think we're going to see grappling exchanges where both guys have moments and they push each other up against the cage and they're landing knees and they're landing elbows. And, Delide's not scared of being on the ground. He had that really good performance against Jack Hermanson where he got him in the calf slicer. But RDR's on a different level. If this gets to the ground, that's RDR's wheelhouse, especially in a 3-round fight at light heavyweight. RDR will easily bank those first couple rounds lying on top of him, looking for the submission. I think Delide will be technically sound when it comes to his jiu-jitsu and his wrestling. I think there might be a couple of scary moments on the feet where Delide's wild and throws these massive big overhands, and just because RDR's quite awkward and has toolman syndrome where he walks back with his chin in the air, they might land a couple of shots, but if strikers like Kyle Baralho, who's way more technical than Delide, is unable to get Reina de Ritter out of there while landing big shots, I don't think Delide is going to be. I'm going to take Reina de Ritter. If it was 5 rounds, I would take him by submission, but I'm going to take him by decision. I think Delide hangs in there, maybe has a couple of moments, but I think RDR is going to take over as the fight goes on. I think he'll win the control on the ground. I think he'll win the positions. I think he'll win the scrambles. And I think a lot of this is going to take place in the clinch and in the body lock, and that's where RDR is going to be able to land those knees and really score some points. So I'm going to take Reina de Ritter by decision. Next, we have the co-main. I thought RDR versus Delide was the co-main, but it's not. It is Sergey Spivak versus Vitor Petrino. Now, I have always been a Spivak fan on the account of the fact that Sergey Spivak could not get any more ugly as a human. Therefore, he is not afraid to eat some punches. He does not care if he comes out of there with a broken orbital or a missing tooth. This guy literally looks... This guy was born looking like a fucking inbred Yeti. Like, he is not he's not appealing to the eyes, all right? Sergey Spivak is here for one reason, and it is not for fame. It is not for glory. It is to beat whoever they put in front of him in the cage so he can get his money and he can go home to his family. Sergey Spivak, really good wrestler, used to be the dark horse of the heavyweight division, had a couple of setbacks, and recently has kind of fallen in love with his striking a little bit, which is somewhat concerning. Vitor Petrino used to fight at light heavyweight, had a couple of setbacks like the loss to Anthony Smith when Anthony was way past his prime. We'll check when that was. Yeah, that was 2 years ago. Then had another loss to Dustin Jacoby, who KO'd him. And so then he was like, you know what, the weight cut's too much for me. I'm going to come up to heavyweight. And we were really concerned about how this guy was going to do at heavyweight. He did sub Austin Lane, that's right. And then he knocked out Thomas Peterson. But if you remember the knockout of Thomas Peterson, Peterson was looking okay for a wee bit in that fight until Vitor Petrino did land. Vitor Petrino then fought Stephen Aspin where we went to decision. Both guys kind of hurt each other in that fight. Stephen Aspin's shown that he's a guy that can keep up a really high volume for 3 rounds as a heavyweight, other than his last fight, I guess. But Vitor Petrino, he is going to gas at certain points. He is a really good wrestler, and he has extreme KO power on the feet and only takes one shot. So if Sergey Spivak goes out there and chooses to stand up against him like he did Cortez Acosta, like he did Delija in his last fight, I will be very concerned. But I think the moment this becomes a wrestling fight, I think Sergey Spivak's going to be all over him. I think Spivak's been a blob a lot longer than Petrino. So Petrino has that kind of build and that physique where his arms get really, really tired with all the lactic muscle build up when he does look to wrestle, when he does look to implicate the wrestling. Whereas Spivak's got more of a blob build, kind of like a Tybora, where those chubby guys, they don't get tired from wrestling. They love being in the clinch. They love lying on top of each other. All they wanted you to do is burn your arms out. So I believe once the wrestling starts, I think at first the stand-up will be scary for Petrino. He's going to look really scary at the first, and maybe he does just go out there and KO Spivak. But I think he's going to be a little bit concerned that if they wrestle, his cardio is going to fade. And Sergey Spivak in a 3-round fight is a really tough guy to get past. We saw here against Waldo Cortez Acosta, he did lose the decision. Go back and watch that fight. It took place primarily on the feet, and Spivak was landing a lot of really nice shots. Vitor Petrino is quite chinny, so there is always a world that Spivak's able to land on his chin. He did beat Ante Delija, who's 26-7. He beat him with just a jab as well. Gelton Almeida, that KO has not aged super great, but I think Almeida's by far a better jiu-jitsu player than Vitor Petrino is, so he's a lot better at winning those positions. Wins against Tybora with an armbar, that's a good win. That's aged very well for Tybora to be a guy that submits him. And then lost to Cyril Gahn. We don't care if you lose to Cyril Gahn or Tom Aspinall in this division. It's not a big deal. I'm going to take Spivak. I'm going to take him by submission in the second round. I think as this fight goes on, I think Vitor Petrino might win the first round. I think he might have some big moments. But I think as the wrestling exchanges, the clinch exchanges, the up against the cage, and the fight starts to slow down and both fighters start to miss a lot of big shots and land on each other's blocks, I think Petrino's going to be the first guy to gas. I think his arms are going to get tired. And I think Spivak's going to put him up against the cage. I think he's going to grab a single leg or a body lock and drag him down to the ground where he looks for a rear naked choke or an arm triangle. I'm going to take Sergey Spivak to submit him in round 2. Main event time. We have Anthony Hernandez versus Gregory Rodrigues. And honestly, I have been back and forth all week on this fight, purely because it's so obvious, right? That's why I've called this the easy money card, because it's such an obvious fight. And what I mean by that is I don't mean it's an obvious who to pick. I just mean there's 2 options here. Gregory Rodrigues lands something early to Anthony Hernandez' chubby, flabby body, where he's clearly shown that he is prone to be finished. If you hurt him in the body, Michel Pereira dropped him with a body kick, hurt him really badly. Sean with the knee to the body, hurt him really badly. And even Kevin Holland was able to land against him, hurt him really badly, and finished him early in his career. Gregory Rodrigues has 1 round. I'm not exaggerating. He has 1 round to go out there and to land a body kick, to land a 1-2 down the middle, to land something that is going to scare Anthony Hernandez, something that is going to get respect, something that is going to put him on the back foot. If he does not do this, Anthony Hernandez is going to use his boxing, this sort of like in-the-pocket boxing that looks good, but really it isn't anything more than a lead hook. He's going to use that to get to your single leg. He's going to use that to get to the double leg. He's going to take you down. Gregory Rodrigues is a strong, strong guy. He will get back up. He will engage in the clinch. He might even push Hernandez against the cage early. That is what Hernandez wants. Hernandez doesn't care whether he holds you down for 1 minute or whether you bounce straight back up. He just wants the wrestling exchanges to see who gets tired first. Anthony Hernandez, he may not have the greatest physique, but he will not gas. We have seen him do this so many times. We saw him do it to Delidze before he got the finish in the 4th round. Pick him up, drop him back down. Pick him up, drop him back down. Now you're tired. I'm going to land some shots on the feet. Pick you back up, put you back down. He can do that all day. That is his bread and butter. That's his wheelhouse. The question is, does he get those takedowns off against Gregory before Gregory can land on him in the 1st round? And I think the smart pick is Hernandez. I'm going to take Hernandez, and I'm going to take him by submission in the 3rd round. And the reason for this is because it wasn't actually that long ago that we saw Gregory Rodrigues gas against a guy like Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier was 40 at the time, and Rodrigues had him wobbled. He was landing massive shots on him, but Jared Cannonier stayed smart. He put his guard up. He forced Gregory Rodrigues to fight in the clinch. He forced him to fight up against the cage. Rodrigues got tired, and by the end of that 3rd round, Jared Cannonier had him broke, and he was able to land the shot to get rid of him. Gregory Rodrigues is a glass cannon, which means, although he's super powerful and he's super killer instinct and only takes 1 punch, he has shown that, he can be quite chinny. We saw the Bruno Ferreira loss. He's shown that, if you land the right shot on his chin, he is a glass cannon and he will go to sleep. Especially being so big at middleweight, he's clearly cutting a lot of weight. For Anthony Hernandez against Sean Strickland, I thought he had moments of success. He wasn't able to get any takedown at all, but he did have some moments where Sean would press forward and Hernandez would kind of do this dip down into a massive left lead hook, and it was working against Sean Strickland at certain times. Hernandez boxing sometimes works because he will dip before he throws, especially when he's pushed up against the cage, and the other fighter might, think that he's coming for a takedown, so they kind of lower their guard a little bit, and that's how Hernandez is able to land. There is a world in which Rodrigues pressures Hernandez, and Hernandez lands a simple hook, lead hook or a rear hook, and Rodrigues goes out cold just because he's such a glass cannon. But although he's a glass cannon, the emphasis is not on the glass. The emphasis is on the cannon. If Hernandez backs up and lets Rodrigues to dictate the pace and land the shots, Rodrigues is going to absolutely KO him. I think Hernandez needs to have a high guard. He needs to watch out for the body shots. He needs to force the pace, push the pace, force Gregory Rodrigues to use some of that cardio. And at the end of the day, Gregory Rodrigues does not have the takedown defense that Sean Strickland has. We know that now after seeing Sean Strickland versus Khamzat Chimaev. And also Sean Strickland's pressure and his fighting and his basics and his simple techniques is what made it that Hernandez wasn't able to go nowhere near his hips. He wasn't able to get past the jab. Gregory Rodrigues isn't as fast as Sean Strickland. He doesn't have as good a jab as Sean Strickland. He just has the power. So I'm going to take Anthony Hernandez to win by submission after maybe a close 1st round or maybe dropping the 1st round. I think eventually he's going to be able to outpace Gregory. I think he's going to be able to out-cardio him. And I think the submission will come his way. Those are my predictions. Those are my breakdowns for this card. I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to leave a comment and tell me whether I'm right or wrong. And I will catch you guys in the next one. I've been the MMA Mustache, and this has been my predictions. Thank you for watching.